Welcome to Restaurant Catering Smarts, your go-to podcast for restaurateurs looking to better operate and grow their catering profit centers. With every episode, you can count on expert advice, innovative strategies, and tasty tips straight from industry leaders. Our purpose is to help your business thrive. So, let's dig in to another juicy episode.
Hello again, I'm Michael Attias, your host of Restaurant Catering Smarts, and today's guest is Jill Hammett, the newly appointed Chief Operating Officer of CaterZen's Catering Software, the innovative catering software platform revolutionizing the restaurant catering industry. With a wealth of experience in both technology and operations, Jill brings a unique blend of strategic insight and operational expertise to her role at CaterZen's. Jill's passion for leveraging technology to improve business processes makes her an exciting voice in the world of catering tech, and we're thrilled to have her on the show today. But before we get into asking Jill a bunch of questions, let's take a minute to recognize our sponsor. Restaurant Catering Smarts is brought to you by CaterZen's Catering Software, the industry leader in helping restaurants turn their catering chaos into calm. With CaterZen's best-in-class catering sales and operational tools, you can elevate your business from depending on personalities to achieving predictable growth through proven processes. Discover why top independent and enterprise restaurants trust CaterZen's. Whether you want a free 30-day trial to see the system in action or a Zoom-based walkthrough, go to www.caterzen.com and see how you can take your catering game to the next level. Now let's dive into this episode of Restaurant Catering Smarts. Jill, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. Okay, so start off. Give me a number between 1 and 300.
Okay, 13.
13. Sorry, we do not have questions with unlucky numbers. No, it says, if you could relive your childhood in some other country than your own, what country would you choose and why?
Good question. Greece.
Greece, why?
Just the beauty.
Mamma Mia?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, you got to have a real answer.
Queen, yeah.
Have you ever been to Greece?
No, I have not.
It's gorgeous.
It's on the bucket list.
Yeah, well, I went when all I had was a bucket to put my stuff in college, and it's a whole another story. Okay, so this is very unique. This is our inaugural episode, and I wanted to bring you on for two reasons. One, to sort of introduce the whole CaterZen's planet to you as our new COO, and so we could talk about that a little bit, but more importantly is you have a wealth of knowledge in the industry, and so I want to go down that road as well, because I don't want to make this predominantly about CaterZen's. Having worked with you in the past, you've got so much expertise to share with the listeners, so I want to focus a lot on that, and we'll talk about your position at CaterZen's as well. Tell me a little about, for the people who don't know you, give us a little bit of background, how you got in the catering industry. I mean, I started off washing dishes. I'm guessing you didn't start off at 16 washing dishes.
No, actually, I didn't work in a restaurant until I was like in my 40s. So yeah, I guess my path to this has been a little bit unique. I guess go back, 20 plus years. I was a stay-at-home mom for, guess about, 17 years. But during that time, I grew up in the Martha Stewart era, where hosting and, all of that. Martha Stewart was a caterer to begin with. And,
right.
Just everything that went along with that. Through volunteering, just a lot of people asking, it's kind of how all of that got started. Basically, for years, I almost just had a little side hustle, helping other people throw a party or do events. I did a lot of volunteering, and doing a lot of different, like event planning and that sort of thing through schools and, fundraisers and all that kind of stuff. And that really continued, just to grow that passion. Then, you move forward to almost about 10 years ago. I had my oldest daughter going off to college, and my husband and I were talking, and, just like any other moms, you're starting, our kids are leaving the nest. Um, I needed to find, some more purpose. And so I decided that I was going to look, for what I thought was going to be a part-time job. Um, I walked into a new restaurant in my area to really have lunch and got to talking to the GM and the area director that was there at the time. And I did know, that they were looking for somebody kind of just part-time. And just took this leave. And what was supposed to be a part-time job, about 2 weeks in, I got asked to go, it was a new location that had just opened. As some of you probably know, I worked for Mission Barbecue. And at that time, there was only, I think, 16, 17 restaurants. And catering was a newer focus, and that restaurant was new and had not started catering. They were going to do an event. I basically got asked to go just to talk to people because I haven't really ever met a person I don't mind talking to. Um, and so that was, ultimately my goal. We got, to the location. The area director and the team, is trying to kind of put this thing together. And I can say this because we all laugh about it, but it was kind of a hot mess. The food was great, but nothing really looked that great. We took care of the people and the food was great, but it was
But
not what you'd consider a high end,
you,
catering.
you, you know, I guarantee it looked better than one of my first caterings when I opened up a Corky's. No, this
Uh,
is a funny story. So it was a Friday night. And my operations manager and I, we had two caterings going on. So we had two catering captains go. And one guy, Gerald, everybody loved Gerald. I mean, he knew how to take care of people, and he'd walk around with the tea pitchers and chop up barbecue, whatever. He had one 8-foot tablecloth on two 8-foot tables.
yep. That was,
And
we
we were
didn't
just
even
like,
we had a paper tablecloth. So I might top you off on that one.
well, but he didn't even have the whole table, but
Yeah.
they loved him and they tipped him. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. I'm sure there could be a whole book of
Yeah.
faux pas in the catering industry.
Exactly. So, kind of with that, as we were setting up, they started, it was like, oh, well, do we have this? Do we have that? And, the area director who ended up, being a great mentor of mine, was like, hey, have you ever done this? And I was like, well, not professionally, but, yeah, I've done a lot of events and, hosted a lot of different things. And so organically, it just turned into me becoming the catering manager. So my, part-time job took on a whole new life.
Was
Um,
that for the entire chain or is that for one
no,
location?
that was just for one location at that time. So we went from basically doing no catering to about, a little over a year in, we hit $1 million, out of that one four-wall
Wow.
location.
And
So
what do you was that mostly full service events, drop off events, a
a
combination?
combination of all of it, a
And,
combination of everything.
and I've worked with a lot of operators and they're like, oh, I want to do $1 million a year like you did. And they just think it's like, I don't know, you just click your heels 3 times and you're in the land of Oz. I don't know.
It's
So
definitely not a yellow brick road to get there.
and I will say $1 million in a year to build catering sales, and this is going back 9-10 years ago.
A little over a year, yeah. Not
Yeah, that's quite significant. So maybe you could share with everybody what are some of the things you did, your team did to build that up. Again, it doesn't happen just because you have a beautiful logo on the
yeah,
building, right?
yeah. I would say, it was a mixture of things. Two, I really personally think the two of the most important things in catering are relationships and your reputation. So you do what you say you're going to do, and you always come out. You're going to make mistakes. Things aren't always going to go perfectly, but at the end of the day, you make that customer happy, and they're going to tell everybody else. And so it really was about, it wasn't just me. I had a phenomenal GM, a phenomenal team that, we all worked together. Everyone was promoting catering. But it really was just about getting out there and utilizing every event that you went to, whether it was even a delivery, or a full service event. You realized that you were on show. You were, you know, selling your catering at that time to whoever, whether it's a 10-person delivery that, one person orders it, 9 more people are there that are potential new customers, an
Right.
event of 100, same thing. You got 1 customer and 99 potential new customers. So you need to make sure that you're utilizing that opportunity to really show them who you are. Clearly, yes, your food's got to be great. You got to have a consistent product, but it's about how you make those people feel. You're on time, you do exactly what you're going to say, and you keep that reputation clean. And then your customers are going to start doing the work for you. You got to go in there, you got to knock on doors, you got to find people, but your customers are doing that for you too because they're recommending you. So I would say
Sure.
for the 2 biggest factors, is just always out there, ready to talk to people. When I led an event, I took that as an opportunity to, shake hands and kiss babies. You're making sure that your team's executing, but you're getting out there and you're chatting with people and you're talking and you're not, you know, throwing it down their throat. You certainly, you got to represent yourself, in a professional manner. But when somebody says, "Hey, who is this?" or asks you a question, you're there at the ready to answer, and be able to, let them know what you're doing.
You bring up a good point is, I'm going to call it the warm fuzzy factor for lack of a better words. Like, I've worked with you professionally before you came on the team. Definitely you have that, I'm going to say Ina Garden personality, not Martha Stewart, because she can be a little abrasive. And honestly, Martha Stewart's hotter, but Ina Garden takes better care of her husband. I want to come back as Jeffrey in another life. I mean, Jeffrey's like, oh, Jeffrey just went to the mailbox and I made him his favorite quiche. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't even get that on my birthday. You have that. Jillian on our team has that. I don't have that. Like, I built $1 million a year just in spite of myself, because it's not that I'm not a nice person. I don't have that warm. I think it's just like, okay, let's take care of this and move on. It's just not my personality. Do you find
that very
that's
wise mentor of mine used to say, and I probably won't quote this exactly right because you're the king of quotes, not me. But it's not what you say, it's how you make someone feel. And that's always stuck with me because I really truthfully do believe that, because that's what they leave remembering, not the words that you said, but, the feeling you gave them.
So when y'all recruited, as the operation grew and you had more markets and whatever, did you specifically recruit for that personality type and say, we could teach them catering, but we can't teach them to be warm and fuzzy and engaging?
Yeah, I mean, definitely always looking for a person that is good and willing to make relationships. So yes, we were definitely looking for that type of person.
Did you ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie?
I did not.
So, I'm not gonna say I'm a nerd, but I'll say I'm a nerd. I never was into sports, never into music. Like, people would quote songs, and I think the only album I ever had was if it was given free. I mean, just not a music person. I like cooking. And I used to go to the bookstore and read business books on the weekends, just sit there and like literally I would just tear through business books. And it's a classic. And, the Dale Carnegie course came as a result. And I remember reading the book, and it talked about the most important sound of someone is their name. And you're better to be interested than interesting. So I was going to a friend of mine's college graduation party. It's backyard cookout, barbecue, whatever at the time. And I said, you know what? I'm going to find one person that no one would talk to and talk to them. And literally I met this guy who's a professor at Memphis State. And I talked to him for 40 minutes. And I really took a genuine interest. Like, I'm sure he had some kind of boring field of study that no one cared about. And I mean, I thought he was going to put me in his will by the end of the conversation. Like, he was so enthralled. And I literally didn't say anything about myself. And I'm really good about talking about myself. I've never been shy. So it's very interesting. We talk, I come from the school of of techniques and marketing and emails and niche marketing, and all this is equally important, right? It goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
So how much of that growth would you say was we gave great food, great service, made relationships, and how much was it we actually pounded the pavement, did follow-up marketing, did marketing versus relationship management?
I'd say it was a lot more heavily influenced by the relationship building. And the reason that I say that is, you know, part of our program, I was tasked to go and do, certain types of marketing drops and that sort of thing.
Like knocking on the door and bringing food type of thing?
Yeah, getting things like that set up. And I certainly did that, but I ended up, instead of just going and looking for those people randomly and doing it more cold call, my books were filled doing that based off of people that I met while I was executing catering. And so I really see, that they both kind of went hand in hand, but if I was not there and putting myself up front and center, um, you know, I would have met those people that I could then in turn, take lunch to and chat with and then potentially sell catering.
And I'm assuming you had a lot of referrals.
Yes, a lot.
So what I'm hearing you said, did you take like a lot of the first orders yourself and set them up?
Yep. Actually did that quite a lot. Another thing that I always found important, even once we got busier and I wasn't really doing those orders, per se, on my own, obviously when we started, it
Right.
was like, okay, you got to take everything, which was great for growing the business. But you would start to look, at orders that were coming in and seeing a business we'd never worked with before. And maybe there was another driver, scheduled for that, but maybe you could just ride along, and go chat and that sort of thing. So I would try to make that a priority if I noticed it was someone that I wanted to do business with. Because another thing that I found, super interesting was a lot of customers that ended up becoming really large clients of mine or doing really large events. They ordered catering for like 10 people, usually first as a tryout. And I think that's something that a lot of people do. That they start to get busy and they're only focusing on the big and the new.
Right.
They quit focusing on their existing customers, they kind of come complacent with that. But you cannot dismiss anything that's coming through your door, even if it's small, because that could be the person that's got 1,000-person event and they just want to taste your food and kind of try it out. Maybe they're bringing it to a meeting so they can talk about options. That kind of stuff happens all the time. My very first 1,000-person event, they ordered, a 10-person delivery and just had it sent. So you got to like really pay attention to who's ordering and companies that you might want to work with, because it doesn't matter. A lot of times those really small things will lead into bigger things. It's a trial.
Yeah.
It's
and
tough.
You also don't know who's sitting on the board someplace,
Sure.
who's a volunteer at
Mhm.
a church, who's in charge of the picnic committee,
Yep.
someplace else, or their spouse. So that's definitely any kind of, I know people like very particular tips. Like, is there any, like if you were going to start from scratch and build another brand, besides those relationships, is there any outreach that you would do, or marketing or advertising or promotion to get your name out there?
I think the best thing that you can do is advertise with your food, no matter what. I mean, if you're selling catering, that's what it, really is all about. And, that's the big thing. You got to get out there. Now, I think things, if you're a full service caterer, things like expos, and different things like that are really smart to make sure that you put yourself out there for that if you're trying to get into that market. But ultimately, your food is what does the talking. So you want to have that person that's getting in front of them, with your food.
So, what role did tech play when you started your position?
Yep, great question. So back in 2015, when I started, it was Excel spreadsheets to make invoices, and everything was, handwritten order sheets. And you were calculating up those order sheets and, adding things up at the end of the day. It was very, very basic.
How'd you
You know,
keep a database of customers?
you didn't, it was right here.
It was in your flip phone?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Definitely was not ideal, by any means. Filing cabinets, with things, in it, and it was not definitely easy. So I mean, technology really, really empowers you, to streamline that, to keep all that information, because eventually you're not, you scale so big, you're not going to remember all those specifics about customers, previous orders. And we live in a day and age now where people just want to be able to call or text, whether, or go online and say, hey, I want to do the same thing that I did 2 weeks ago. And they
Right.
don't want the time, for you to have to try to find it, go get a handwritten sheet, and locate it,
Right.
duplicate it. So it's really, it's a bonus for everybody. It streamlines, from an execution standpoint, but it really helps the customer when technology comes into play.
Yeah, for sure. So, how long before y'all invested in a software platform?
So I was probably a couple of years in, before we went to, the solution that we had before, CaterZen. And, it was a game changer at the time, really, helpful, to keep up with the information, the previous orders, that sort of thing. And of course, as we continue to grow, catering at the individual locations continue to grow, knowledge is power, and it was there was no way to really execute that level of catering without having some sort of technology.
So let's just talk about the CRM piece, if you will, the
Mhm.
customer piece. What, and again, you're just going to be pulling something out of the air, but having a CRM versus not having a CRM and having all that information about a client, whether it's their order history, being able to get them a copy of the invoice, have notes on them, so when you're talking to them, you can be personable and remember, because you can't remember something about
Yep.
all 1,000 people. What, if you had to put a percentage on it, does that have a 10% bump, a 20% bump
I
in
think it.
sales?
I think it's definitely higher. I think. I mean, I would. Customer service is my forte, not necessarily percentages, but I would say it's higher than 20% because, um, I think when you're doing smaller amounts of catering, you might, might be a smaller percentage, return. But once you start to get into those big numbers, it's just impossible. And you are not going to be able to grow, without
Right.
it.
Why do you think, I've always found it interesting, a restaurant will spend 25,000 on an oven, they'll spend 50,000 on a point of sale system, but you tell them to go invest in a catering salesperson that's sold catering before, or go buy a vehicle and wrap it, or go buy some hot bags. Why do you feel there's this big resistance to invest in that, but they're going to go spend $500,000 on a build out of a retail strip center for a little place? Why do you think there's that resistance?
I think it just comes down to that they're restaurant people, and catering's kind of scary. It's the unknown. And I think a lot of operators, they know that it's going to return, but it's a lot of work. And I just think it ends up becoming more so about that.
I never
It's
considered
not
it.
safe, you know.
God, I considered it easier than running a restaurant. For
Oh,
me, I thought it was easier.
I'm going to disagree with you on that one, but
Well, especially drop-off catering. You're just putting food, I thought that was way easier. Maybe barbecue's an easier medium than
Yeah.
a lot of things. Like we didn't have to do people have to make sandwich platters and stuff. That's a little bit more work than putting, 10 pounds of pulled pork in a pan and, what have you. But I noticed that there's a big resistance, but they want the sales. And if you look at the amount of profit it can bring in compared to the investment, it's way cheaper than opening up a second location.
Well, and I think a lot of times catering, we talk about this a lot, is a little bit more the long game. You got to, the work is up front, the investment tends to be up front to position yourself, but the return might not come right away. And I think that that's scary, for different people personally.
So if you were looking in the future, we talk a lot about AI and other things. What are some things you're seeing out there that you think are going to have an impact in the next 5 years in the industry?
Definitely AI. I think AI is probably the biggest. And just hopefully a lot more integration within all of the different tech pieces are going to make it simpler. I think everybody's kind of playing in their own sandboxes a little bit right now when it comes to like restaurant tech. And hopefully, there's going to be some more seamless, integrations.
I really wish there was a menu standard, where everybody followed the same, hierarchy of how to set up a menu and modifiers and that. So everybody can just say, hey, we're using the same template and it doesn't matter who you're playing with. It's the number, the PLU numbers, SKU numbers, whatever you want to call it, all play together, and you don't have to spend all this time right there. And then you can take what you want with the menu, do what you want with it.
Yeah.
What do you see the biggest mistake operators make in catering?
That's a great question. I mean, one, not hiring someone with a catering focus that they plan on trying. If they really want to have a catering business and grow catering, they have to put somebody in the place to go out there and grow catering. It's not just going to come to you. And I do think, in the beginning, a lot of people fall in the trap of, no, we need this person to help in the restaurant instead of sending them out. There's inherent costs with sending them out, especially if they are going to give out free food or, marketing materials or whatever it may be that they're going out to try to do. There's costs up front. And I think that one, they either don't hire the right person, they don't see a return right off the bat, and then they just kind of pull that person back into the restaurant, because they're beneficial there, and they don't put that focus on it. And I think it's just going to come to them. I mean, you've got to put in the work to get it to return. Eventually, if you build up the business, again, going back to what I was talking about with reputation, you might be able to kind of, sustain on referrals as long as you're executing at the same level and that sort of thing. But you can't get that in the beginning. And I just don't think they're putting that focus.
Yeah. One of the mistakes I see is, one, getting started. Two is they have a really good hostess. Let's just say they're making $15 an hour. I know different markets pay different. And they go, oh, well, they're personable. I can have them sell catering. They've never sold catering. They don't know what they're doing. And then, they're serving multiple masters in the restaurant. I think if you can afford to hire someone with that experience, it's worth it. We hired a guy in sales. He wasn't catering sales, but he had sales background. And we looked at, if we could just break even on him the first year, we'd be happy, because then we get all that repeat business in the second year. He would have paid for himself the first year. And, most businesses aren't paying their investment back year one. You go build a restaurant, 3 to 5 year payback, maybe, it just depends on the concept. Well, why wouldn't you be happy? Hey, I put in all this investment in catering, I get it back a year from now, and then it's all profit. And so I see that as
I agree.
As a big one. One of one of the reasons I brought you on board, sort of a triple threat. One, you knew the catering industry. So, when we're designing software, like I didn't go to MIT or Stanford. I can barely do a spreadsheet. So I'm not a tech person, but I understand systems and operations. I do get the business, and I think if you had to pick one, I'd rather be an expert in the business. So the fact that you'd cater for so long, you knew, like, when we talk about a solution for something, you're just not talking hypothetical as I'm going to build something as a techie. It's like, okay, let me picture this, that I'm using it when I'm making a delivery or I'm on the phone with a customer. What's the workflow? And I think that shows through in what we build. I like that.
I agree.
Obviously, knowing our system, having it rolled out for, start to finish 2-year process. That's one thing that it's a simple system to use. It's not simple to master because there's so many parts and pieces, and there could be 20 things you want to do in the system, and most people only do 7 or 8, and that's fine, but you sort of need to know everything, in your position. And I think the biggest, and it's, I forgot who said, you hire attitude, you train aptitude. And where did you learn your leadership style? Like, I didn't really see you, as you were an unofficial leader where you were before. Like, you didn't have the title, you weren't the VP of catering, but you still, I remember when I got married, a friend of mine said, he goes, I want you to remember this on the eve of your wedding night. When you get married, you are the head of the household, and your wife is the neck, and the neck moves the head. So I didn't see you as that quote unquote, the VP of catering, but you definitely were the neck, and you knew how to guide and lead people, which is probably more valuable than having a title. And that's no disrespect to anybody in a position. I know the people you work with, all very accomplished people, but where did that come from? Like, is it raising 2 girls and dealing with a husband?
I think a combination of a lot of things. My childhood, I think I remember getting a little book from a neighbor about being Little Miss Bossy. And that stuck with me. And, I was always kind of the quiet one in the back, but still who kind of, would pull a lot of strings and that sort of thing. Obviously throughout, when I was a stay-at-home mom, I led a lot of different, committees or different things, that, but form some leadership skills. But, clearly I would say the most formative were the last 10 years. I had just a very, very large amount of very wise mentors that had a leadership style that I connected with. And I paid a lot of attention to that. And I think it definitely, kind of shaped that style more.
And what made you, obviously you had a really, I'm not going to say cush job, but you had a very secure, good job. It's not
Great
like
question.
you were worried they're going out of town, they're going out of business tomorrow and I need to go find something, or, my kids are going to starve kind of thing. You have a good life, good family. At this stage of your career, what made you decide to go to something like totally like 180 degrees?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of.
Great question. Kind of the perfect storm, I think I would say. So, because I got, I kind of started a career later in life, I have to say that, this past year I had a milestone birthday that really makes you reflect a lot.
21.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. And I, it was probably one of the hardest things I've had to do to leave, that family, that job, that life that I really did love. But there was a lot of self-reflection over this past, year. I found that when I was part of a small and mighty team that got to roll out CaterZen, and I really found how much I love that aspect. Once I started doing that, how interested I was in it, how much I really enjoyed the nuances of it. And, knowing that that part was going to kind of come to an end and, just changes in my life and just changes in kind of, if I have to, I shared with you that my passion for events was being dimmed a little bit because of doing it so much, and it becoming a career that it wasn't as much fun. And my oldest daughter was getting married. I was planning probably the single most important event up until that point that I'd ever planned. And I realized that some of that was getting a little bit in the way. And so I just felt like it was time to close that chapter and start a new chapter. But that was, it was hard because I like safety and security, and it was a big, big, leap for me to make the decision to say, hey, I'm going to pursue this, and this is something I want to do. So,
And, obviously, for a tech company to bring somebody as a COO who's never been in tech,
yep.
We tend to look at things a little bit differently. I'd rather hire the right people and train them. I don't think there's anything that we're doing you and I aren't doing any programming, so that's the toughest part of it, is saying, what do you see as your biggest challenges, looking in the next, year, 2 years, and what do you see the biggest opportunities you have to make your mark?
Yep. So challenges, I would say, is just diving in and really learning the industry more. Not the catering portion, but the catering tech portion and just tech, restaurant tech in general, understanding that a little bit more, being able to speak that language. I would say, and I don't really look at that as a challenge. It's just going to be the biggest thing that I have to come up, get up to speed with. So I feel like I can speak well, to that. Leaving my mark, obviously just participating, I knew walking in that CaterZen had a great team. I knew what I was walking into, but it can only get better, and we can only get better. And just being a part of new integrations, making it work better for our customers, making our customers understand and utilize. You mentioned, that they might not be using all the tools in the toolbox, teaching them, getting them up to speed on that so they get better. And just growing the company is what I see as,
Yeah, I what I look forward to is once you get all settled in, is how can we create our own events? We did Caterpalooza years ago, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun to put on the seminar, and we had a lot of clients have asked for it. And so I think whether it's live in-person training on the software or bringing in, there's a lot of really, really sharp people in the industry that can teach other people about growing and managing their catering business. So I really want to expand that. That's why we're doing this podcast, because I think there's a lot of people to learn from. And, I go by the one idea principle. All I need is pick up one idea from somebody. It's worth the time, whether it's going to a seminar, listen to a podcast or whatever, just that one idea. So, definitely like super exciting. And I think we're cut on the same cloth that we don't work for money. Like I don't look, we keep score by money, and I don't want to like dip into my pocket to run the company. It's not a nonprofit, but I'm not motivated by money as much as, when somebody tells you, wow, we've been using your software and this is the impact it's had. and it's a feel-good business, and the fact that you're helping people, and
Yeah.
when you develop something and somebody that's a peer says, oh my God, this is better than what we built, and they're,
Mhm.
or have come from another company and they're 10 times bigger, and they go, man, what you've built is way easier and way more intuitive. So that definitely is exciting. I mean, I've got friends in money lending, like hard money real estate business, and are things that just aren't a happy business. Like, I wouldn't want to be a doctor. I mean,
Nope.
you got to hear about people's problems. I mean, I'm sure it's great when you solve them, but you got to listen to people complain about their problems, and, people that, make money, lending money to people or selling cars. It's like I need something that I feel good about, and, I can hold my head up. And I think that's why I liked the hospitality business, because
Yeah.
every place that I ever waited tables, I love the food. It's something you can get behind, right?
Right.
You know,
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said about being proud of the product, whatever your product may be. You have to be behind it, 100%. And, both you and I feel very strongly about that when it comes to CaterZen's.
my first job out of college was archive storage sales,
Okay.
storing boxes of records. Um, Literally, I would have preferred to stab myself in the temple with a rusty pair of pliers. It's just like, who cares? But the
Right.
people who care about it, I have a friend who got bought out by the company that I worked for in college. After 2 years, I just got married, just bought a house. My boss said, Michael, you're just not making your numbers. You need another month. And I said, Russ, you should probably just fire me today. And he was a good guy. He gave me a month's severance, and I took everything in a storage box. I sat in my car and I cried tears of relief. And then I went to Corky's the next day and helped them write their franchise manual, and the rest is history. So I'm just the kind of person that has to definitely believe. And, I look at the brands we work with, and the brands we want to work with. There's a lot of really, really good brands that you can be proud of, that, if you're serving,
Yeah.
if they're serving that food out, they do a phenomenal job. So
Yeah.
that definitely helps when you're selling
Yeah, it really does.
something. I feel bad for the people who are trying to sell crap, because I've always said, I go, I can help you do well, but if you're selling crap with crap service, all I'm going to do is put you out of business quicker. Because I can't fix bad food or bad service or bad attitude.
Exactly.
Let's see. My producer put together some questions that is in 3-point type, must be the same. She must also come from the credit card company that gives me the receipt. Expects to pay $400 for dinner for two, but you can't even read how much it was or what you got.
Yeah.
Let's talk about customer feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't deal with criticism too well. I think you do well talking to customers and getting feedback. What kind of role does that play, whether it's in catering or any business, in improving your business?
You have got to take it seriously. You don't know what you don't know. So I find feedback to be incredibly important. So you mentioned you don't like, conflict, right? I'm with you on that. So there are a lot of customers that if you don't reach out to them and something was wrong and you didn't know about it, they're not going to tell you. They're
Right.
not beating down your door telling you, and you can't fix it. The only reason you're going to know is when they're not coming back to you, right? So I find feedback to be really important, because if you're quick, following up after, a delivery, an event, whatever it may be, and you're getting their true feedback, you have the opportunity to fix it. And you can gain customers by fixing something, appropriately, and not ignoring it. And because people understand you're human, you make mistakes, things happen, right? But so I find it to be incredibly, important. It makes you get better. And you really need to make that, a priority, especially, in the beginning, I think,
Yeah.
because it's how you're going to find out.
Yeah, I'm gonna share a story in a second about that. I'm gonna sort of leapfrog over that to another aspect of that, and that's improving your product and service offerings.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I consider myself, I mean, literally the first place I worked at was a high-end restaurant. It was like a steak and ale, but it was an
Mm-hmm.
independent. It was a great place to work. And they did catering. And what they specialized in is they would do backstage catering at concerts.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they'd have the writers and they would do all that. So
That's
I wasn't
hard.
I wasn't
Been there, done
involved,
that.
but I peripherally saw how that happened. And so what I enjoy from customer feedback is how to make your product better. Because
Mm-hmm.
as much as I know about catering operations, every now and then there are customers, and I've even had prospects who's never
Yeah.
done business with us who say, well, does your software do this? And I go, no, but that's a
But
good
it could.
idea. Let's get on that.
Yeah.
That's a damn good idea. Even if you're not a customer, it's worth the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And, in any kind of business, catering as well, it's like, oh, did you think about this? Did you think about offering this or this level of service? Or can you do graveyard shift? Well, no, we haven't done it before, but sure, if you're going to give me 1,000-person event, I'll feed 30 people at 1 a.m. to get the
Yep.
other 900 and something people. So I think that's really good. So before this podcast, I taught restaurants how to double their profits with catering. I put together the Catering Magic System, and I had a newsletter and an audio newsletter called Restaurant Profit Points. I introduced literally 10 years, so 120 episodes. They're somewhere in the vault, this mythical vault everyone talks about. It's on the cloud. I don't know where the
Yeah.
clouds are. I have lots of clouds today, but I don't know where the cloud is that holds all this stuff. And this woman worked in I don't know if they were a catering aggregator or a catering company, but she had what's called the 1357 rule. And I said, what's that? He goes, when I have a customer, I will call them after their first, third, fifth, and seventh order. I said, okay, why? Because like you said, they're not going to tell you if something's wrong until they have a relationship with you. So you call them after the first, how was everything? Could I have made anything better? Then you skip one, the third, the fifth, the seventh. By the time you've talked to them and they've done 7 orders, you have a relationship, and they're going to call you up and say, hey, Jill, they consider you a friend or a trusted advisor. And they're going to say, hey, look, normally everything's great, but the brownies were a little stale, oh, thanks for letting me know. And then you find out there's a new person working in the kitchen and they don't know what baking soda is or whatever makes brownies
Right.
dry. Water, I don't know what you put in brownies. So, I think that's a very, you've got to get feedback. And it's more than, we get customers who go, well, can we send a survey out after each order? Well, let me tell you, if I had $1 for every time someone asked me to fill out a
Yep.
survey, would you like to stay on hold and fill out a survey? There's nothing better than that,
Yes.
human interaction of, hey, you got a few seconds, I can pick your brain about something. How did this go? Anything we could do better?
Yeah.
And it's also once you have that, you could just say, hey, is there anybody else in your company that orders, right? Because you could have a law firm and they have 5 admins that are ordering lunches for depositions and meetings and what have you, and you need to meet all of them, and you just need one person to be your advocate. So I think it's really great.
Yeah, you can't be afraid to ask that
No.
question, especially once you built relationships with certain people. They don't mind sharing those.
No. So as we're getting sort of to the end of our inaugural, oh my God, that's a tongue twister,
Easy for you to
interview,
say.
our first podcast, is there any question that you think I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
No, considering that you didn't let me know what any of the questions would be.
Okay, so I am going to put you on the spot
Of course
because
you are.
I love dogs and you're getting a puppy. Can you show everybody the puppy you're getting that is nameless until you get the puppy?
I know. Yes. She's just the cutest thing.
Oh my God, she is like, okay, oh my
Look
God.
at her. Yeah.
Like literally, I'm going to steal your dog. Do you remember? Do you remember Bridesmaids? The movie Bridesmaids.
Yes.
Everybody gets a golden retriever puppy. So any enterprise accounts that sign up by the end of the year, you get a free puppy.
Oh, goodness.
You get a free puppy. Jill will have to figure out how to get you the puppy.
Oh,
CaterZen's will pay for the puppy.
Challenge of the year.
Can't guarantee Santa will deliver by Christmas.
Yep. I know.
So,
I can't wait. I am so excited.
Anyway, this has been great. I appreciate it. And super excited to have you on the team. Thanks for being the first interview and sharing with everybody.
So excited to be on
and I'm looking forward to what 2025 is going to bring.
Yep. Same here.
Okay.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
You've been listening to Restaurant Catering Smarts. For more insights and episodes, make sure to follow along, subscribe, and share at CaterZen.com.